Alright, today is the day, and it is an Arete video, but it is a little bit different today. We're going to be jumping in and doing something a little out of the ordinary. I've noticed that some YouTubers like to go through and answer and have question and answers, and they do that through live streaming. Well, I thought maybe I'd do a live stream, but I live out here in the country where our internet connection is so slow that it would actually be a dead stream, I'm sure. So I've just gone through the comments and taken some of those questions that I get asked over and over and thought I would just answer them here in this video. And then I can refer people when they ask that question once again, just send them back to this video to get their answers. Now I do appreciate all the comments that I do get. I have to let you know that sometimes if I haven't gotten to your comments, sometimes I just don't see those. YouTube is pretty good at actually emailing me and telling me that there is a new comment. But I've noticed sometimes when I go back to an older video that I'll see comments in there that I know I would have answered, but I just come to that video and notice that that comment's there. I've never seen it before. Anyway, I don't know, I guess YouTube's not so perfect in their delivery of comments. But when I do, I try to answer those that I can. And there are some of those that just really don't require an answer, but just you saying how much you appreciate the videos. And I do appreciate your comments in appreciation for my putting these videos out there. Now, one of the things, this is not an answer to any question, but part of the comments are a lot of people say that I seem to be the Bob Ross of the automotive world. I guess that is not because of big black afro, but because I guess I have kind of that same tone of voice when I do my narrations that has that soothing aspect of showing you some exciting trip through the world of art being our building the car here, and have that soothing video. Anyway, I guess that is a compliment. Another thing they do is say that I look a lot like Bruce Campbell. I don't know Bruce, never watched the movies that he has made, but after looking on the internet to see who this Bruce Campbell is, I say, I guess I could be recognized as him. And while I was looking around, noticed that he does live just about 30 miles away from me in Ashland, Oregon. So I guess only looks also flock to the same part of the country. Anyway, on to some of those questions. I have answered this question in a previous video, but I am going to revisit it again because I'm sure there will be some other people that are new here and they will see this video maybe more than the other one. But that is, why have I not used carbon fiber when I'm going to all this work in building this car? And that stems to a couple of things, but the main thing is, of course, budget. Originally, when I started building this car, I was going to try to keep all the material costs at $25,000. I have exceeded that, and I'm probably about $35,000 now. But still, if I had gone to carbon fiber, just the jump from S-glass to carbon fiber was about, as I calculated it out, about $17,000 more. And with a budget of $25,000, you can see that would hurt a little bit. Also, it's not just in the carbon fiber price itself. There is a process that you would have to go through in using the carbon fiber, because if you're going to spend that much money, you want to use the ultimate weight savings that carbon fiber would gain you. Now, to do that, we would want to have our resin to fiber ratio just perfect. And to do that, you would have to use a vacuum bagging process. And to do the vacuum bagging, we would have had to create molds that were tailored for that. Now, if you go back and you see the original videos of us building the molds and starting those first parts, I have used a lightweight aluminum flashing to create our parting lines and the little turnbacks at each part of the car. And a vacuum bag would have just crushed those aluminum edges down, creating a null and void situation in being able to use that. Also, if you want to use the carbon fiber vacuum bag, you want to use a pre-preg carbon fiber, and that would require the use of an autoclave. Autoclave would probably only run me $500,000 with the steam generator autoclaves combination for an 8-foot diameter autoclave that could fit this tub in it. And you can see the budget problems there as well. You could also say, well, I guess you could do room temperature hand layups, but we're still back to the same problem of vacuum bagging. Anyway, that is the reason we did not use carbon fiber, and that this is a prototype. We are not in trying to sell this thing to anybody and be able to prove that it is one of the best in the world, the lightest it could be. we are able to do it in S-glass, get the strength factors we want in it. And although it's going to be a little bit heavier than carbon fiber, it will be a lot less expensive. Of course, you heard in that answer to that last question, the answer to another question, and that is how much is it going to cost me to build this car? And like I said, $25,000 was my original budget, and I am probably at about $35,000 now into this thing. I have a lot of materials just kind of stockpiled in my storage room, so I don't have a lot of more expenses to go. Although there are a few things from some machine shops that I'm going to need to create some drive shafts and axles. I do need another machine shop to take those on, and so I don't really know exactly how much that's going to cost me, but I don't believe it's going to be too bad. But there are some expenses to come, and I don't think it will drive it up too much beyond that. But that's where the budget has been, and that's where the budget has gone to. That's how much it costs to build. Now that, of course, is not taking into consideration how much time goes into this. And if you want to know that, well, then you know it is just too expensive, unless I just don't charge myself. And that's the only way we can do this kind of thing. We pay ourselves in sheer joy and enjoyment. Now, tied right to how much this thing's going to cost is how come it is taking so long, or how long does it take to build a car like this? Well, I have been working at this thing about 3.5 years, but of course I don't work on it full time. I have lots of other things going on in my life, other businesses and things going on there, with family matters, like an occasional vacation, things like that. And I hope it doesn't stretch out too long. If you do feel like it's getting too long, maybe you should jump over and see those English fellows creating Project Binky, which is on its 9th year. Although they're getting close to finishing, they are 9 years into the build. Hopefully, we're never going to take that long, but these projects do take quite a bit of time. Take into consideration that I am a one-man show. When I have to do all the design, order the parts, put them together, shoot a video, edit the video, and post it to YouTube. All those things take a little bit of a time to put something like this together, let alone complete the project. So there's your answer. We don't know when it's going to be done, but hopefully less than 9 years. Another question is, where did I go to school? Where did I learn to do this kind of thing? Well, I did not go to school for this kind of thing. I did 1 year of a college in an automotive program that was more of a mechanics program, and then decided that that was just going to take too long to get into the design world by going that route, and decided not to let school interfere with my education. Ever since then, I have just been out on the streets learning these things. And in fact, a big batch of my life has been spent in the architectural world, and I didn't even go to school for that. I just have the ability to walk in and see how something's done and be able to duplicate it just on site. I guess that is a God-given skill, the ability to see things done like that, and the ability to not be afraid to jump in and try things out. And so when you combine those two things, it's easy to jump in, learn those things quickly by actually just duplicating and trying them out. But most of those questions that ask me that thing are interested in actually figuring out how they could get into this world and what kind of education they could pursue. So if you don't have that ability or those God-given skills right off the bat and you think you need to go to college for this kind of a thing, I would say you would have to pursue industrial design. I say industrial design because I do more than just cars. I do other mechanical things, and so that would be lumped into industrial design in general. If you wanted to go to automotive design, of course, that is an easy thing to research and figure out how to get into that, although that is one of the most highly competitive things there is in the automotive world, is the design, working in automotive design for a big manufacturer. So take a look at those. I will actually, in fact, I am going to give a shout out to a podcast called Crown Unfiltered. If you're interested in automotive design, go listen to that, and he gives you a lot of insight as he talks to automotive designers and the difficulties it took them to get into positions where they became well known in the design world. Right, a lot of people ask me where I get my materials from. So in the basic materials, the fiberglass and the epoxy and other resins, I go to US Composites, and you can find them at uscomposites.com online. They are based in Florida and ship around the US, and I don't know if they ship internationally. I've never had to worry about that kind of thing. But if you want to buy materials, they are one of the least expensive for the best materials. And if you order from them, please let them know that Jay Jarvie from Builder Creator sent you. Maybe they will be a sponsor of this channel one day. Never know. Anyway, there are a few things that they do not carry that I use often, and that is like a unidirectional cloth and Nomex honeycomb core. And I go to fiberglass, G-L-A-S-T instead of G-L-A-S-S, fiberglass.com, and they carry those things, although they are a bit more expensive than US Composites. And so, like I said, I am always after a good deal. So US Composites, when you need a good deal and lots of materials, fiberglass when you need some specialty things. Anyway, that's where I get my materials, and there is your answer for that. Now, another comment, which is never a question, but just always a complaint, it seems, and that is, why aren't you wearing a dust mask when you're doing those dangerous things, sucking in all those glass particles? Well, first off, let me just say that I do use a dust mask, although you don't see me very often do it because I do a little fake or trickery on video, and that is that often I will do a sanding procedure just for the camera. I'll set the camera, turn it on, and go do a little sanding just to show you that that process is needed. And then I will turn the camera off and do the 2 or 3 hours worth of sanding that you do not want to see. And it's much easier for me to just do a little sanding without a mask on and fog up my glasses. Anyway, I do use masks. This is a basic mask that I use for most procedures. Just a regular old shop dust mask, has a little carbon filter liner. And then when I get into some serious action, I do have this full face mask because my glasses fit inside of here and do not fog up, which the other mask seems to force the condensation up and fog you up. So there you are. I do use safety precautions. But those people who really are worried about my health, don't worry. And those who are just complaining, go find a video that has nothing to do but teach you safety practices in the shop and see if they are doing things right over there, because that's what they're preaching and they should be doing it right. Is not that correct? Now, speaking of my glasses not fogging up, I'm going to grab those and a little piece of paper here, because another question, probably our final one here I'm going to go over, is a lot of people are asking, how many layers am I using? What is the layup schedule for this project? A lot of people are curious about how many layers I'm using. I suppose it comes back to maybe they're working on a project and they want to know how many layers they're going to have to put to achieve some kind of a structural integrity or build up a project to where it's going to be strong enough. But I don't know what they're doing, so I can't tell them how many layers they need. And I'm sure they're just kind of trying to figure out how many layers are in my project, and so they can kind of adapt that to whatever they're working on. But that's really a difficult thing to say, because I can't just say that there are 5 layers throughout the whole project. There are different layers all throughout the project, and I'll just kind of go down a list of what some of those are. So unlike the clamshell, the non-structural pieces of the car, the front and the rear clamshells that just form the bodywork, there are only 4 or 5 layers in there. There will be more layers going into some of those places when we get the attachment points in, and we will be reinforcing around those places. But the 4 layers are the main shell of it, and then we'll be adding some more structural pieces and kind of putting some more framework within some of those cells that come down and create little bulkheads, air diverters, things like that around the engine. Now, on some of those panels, when there's a big wide open space, a big flat area, I put a Nomex honeycomb core in there, and then we add another 2 or 3 layers on top of that Nomex honeycomb. So then you're talking 5 or 6 layers on those big flat cosmetic or body part pieces. But when you get into the bulkheads and some of the structural pieces where there is a foam core in there, we're up to 6 to 7 layers on some of the flat surfaces. Now, if you have a bulkhead when it's reinforced, I can be pushing 8 or 9 layers. Now, that is just talking about the bulkheads on the flat surfaces. When it comes across and joins an area where there's some kind of reinforcement, or you make a transition from one plane or one bulkhead to another surface, there are extra layers in there that reinforce that area. Now in those bulkheads or other areas where there is a subframe mount, there can be up to 12 to 14 layers in general through those areas. And finally, if you jump and go back to some of the videos where we are putting in that vertical laminate cores, for the rollover structure, there is up to 40 layers in those roll bar areas. Now within those vertical structures, every third or fourth layer, there is a piece of laminate that crosses over and spreads that weight out into the bulkhead. And that, like I said, multiplies up, and with those layers being over an inch thick in total, there are 40 layers within there. And of course, not just in the column, as I said, that spreads out and spreads that weight, that strength across the bulkhead. And into those verticals, which you'll see in a couple of video, we are drilling some holes, and that is where the subframes will bolt to the bulkhead through those vertical columns. Also, with all these panels in the bulkheads and other laminations, there are areas that are just specially reinforced and it can have multiple layers, like I say, anywhere from 6 up to 40. And at each of the corners, when a panel transitions, instead of just having 4 layers lap onto the next panel and 4 layers, you have a shear problem where that can peel or delaminate and pull apart. So instead, you put down a couple of layers, you put the next layer down, and then that comes around the bend, comes around the bend, comes around the bend, and so on the corners and transitions, there are fibers that are locked in together as the panels are spread and bond to each other through multiple layers. Anyway, that gives you a general idea of how many layers there are and the whole layout and the plan for the layout. Whether that helps you in your design, I don't know. That gives you just an idea in general, as I said. Now, to emphasize that point, we have a structural part that we're going to be showing you today. We have done a little more lamination on the tub, and in particular, I have put some inserts that are going to hold a aluminum panel on the bottom of the tub. This will not only be an aerodynamic flat plane to move air underneath the car, but is going to take that U-shaped tunnel and make it into a complete enclosed tube, which will increase the torsional rigidity of that tube. So it does have a little bit of an area to flex right now, and that panel is just going to give one more thing to help stiffen that tube up of the tunnel, which is the main structure of our car for torsional rigidity. Anyway, let's jump in, take a look at putting those inserts in, and you will see how multiple layers are getting added up, even as we speak, right on top of those inserts. Let's go take a look. Now, we just talked about these vertical columns, these vertical laminates that make up our roll bar structure in the back bulkhead. And as they come down that rear bulkhead, they make a turn and go across the floor here. So what I'm doing is drilling a couple of holes that will be part of our rear subframe mount. And as you can see, drilling through 1 inch of fiberglass creates a lot of material. There is a lot of fiberglass coming out of that much of a lamination. Trim it up with a razor knife, and we'll get on with our embedments that we're going to do now. So I'm going to place these little capture nut embedments into about every 8 inches, and we're going to have to drill through. These are a little captured nut is what this embedment is going to be created out of. And so we're drilling a hole the size of that nut. Now, some of the places it drills into solid fiberglass, but most of them are drilling through about 5 layers of fiberglass into the foam core of the floor. And I'm kind of cheap and I'm not willing to pay the $3-4 for these embedments if you buy them professionally. So I just make them out of a nut, TIG welded to a very thin fender washer. Once they're welded up, grind them down, clean them up, sand the surface so that they will bond well. Also cut a little notch into the edge of the washer so that it can't turn once it's embedded, in case you have a tricky nut. I'm also going to take a piece of oil-based clay and put it into the nut, smash it in there nice and tight so that it fills all the threads. We do not want resin getting in there and gumming up the works, so you can't get a nut in there, a bolt in there, I should say. Now, to place these things, I've mixed up some ground or milled fiberglass, thickened up some epoxy, Put that down, and then just knock those things into place. Make sure they're sitting nice and flush. And you can see that little notch there facing in the inside now. That will keep it from turning. And once I've got all these embedments all epoxied in place, I'm going to put a little patch of a twill fiberglass cloth over them. And this is going to keep that thickened epoxy right around the washer, because we want kind of a little ramped surface forming up around that washer, instead of pushing that thickened epoxy out underneath the fiberglass cloth that we're going to be adding. So with each one patched in place, we're going to start adding some thicker, heavier cloth. First one's going to be about 5-inch wide piece of unidirectional cloth, and that will bond them all together and put our first layer down to hold those things captured underneath. And then we're just going to keep adding additional layers. Now this layer is extending another 8 inches beyond that. It also goes and makes a turn and goes 8 or 9 inches down into the tunnel area. So now we have 2 very heavy layers of unidirectional cloth, each one successively lapping further than the other, so that they have more bonding surface, keeping it hard for those things to pull out through all this material. And since this is the final layers of the bottom of the tub, we're going to put some plain weave fiberglass cloth to work it down, get a nice smooth surface, and get a finish. And you can barely see our embedments underneath there, but that is good that we can see them still, because we need to be able to drill them out. You can kind of see a dark spot in the middle. That is the clay that fills our hole in the nut. We're going to take just a spot welding drill. If you do any body work on steel cars, you use one of these things to drill out the spot welds. We're just going to use it, put it right over our dark spot where the clay is, drill through until you feel that drill bit hit the metal, pop the fiberglass out, take a little tool, and dig all the clay out of that nut that's buried down underneath that washer and the 3 layers of fiberglass. And here's one of the little stainless steel cap head screws that are going to go ahead and hold that aluminum panel on. There it is. Nice embedment. Should have plenty of pull power behind those embedments to keep that thing from coming off.